Hello and welcome to the Ourdadsstamps YouTube channel, where we talk about all things related to stamps and stamp collecting. My name's Pete West and I'd like to thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please click on the like button and don't forget to subscribe to get regular updates of new content. Hello from Ourdadsstamps. For today's podcast, I thought we'd have a look at something I bought whilst I was at the Autumn Stampex in September, and I just haven't had a chance to go through it properly since that day, so I thought maybe we could look at this more closely together. And it's an album of New Zealand stamps. Now, I haven't really got into New Zealand stamps in the past, and one of the reasons is there are, particularly for the earlier stamps, there are so many combinations of different paper types, different perforations, different watermarks, that it's very, very difficult to accurately catalogue them. So I've avoided it to a certain extent. But recently I decided to try my hand at it, and when I saw this album for sale at Stampex, I thought it'd be an ideal opportunity to continue with my my learning, shall we say. It was priced at £100 for the album, and because I bought it at the very end of the last day, and I also bought some other stuff from the same dealer, I managed to get it for quite a nice discount. So let's have a look through now and see whether my purchase was worthwhile or not. Whilst I was there, I also bought the catalogue. This is one of Stanley Gibbons' many single country or single area catalogues. And although I've got the up-to-date British Commonwealth catalogue from Stanley Gibbons, that only goes up to 1970. So this will help me to find and to catalogue any of the more recent stamps from New Zealand. So let's have a look and see what we've got. Now, the first page is one of the things that attracted me to this album in the first place. The top four stamps, as you can see, are Queen Victoria Chalon Heads. These are so called because they were taken from a painting by Alfred Edward Chalon, and it was drawn for the first public appearance of Victoria as Queen in the House of Lords, where she prorogued Parliament in July 1837. This particular image was not used on any stamps in Great Britain, so it's not a portrait many people are familiar with. But it was used, as well as in New Zealand, it was also used on stamps of Canada, Bahamas, Grenada, Tasmania, Queensland and Natal. So it was fairly extensively used. And it's quite an attractive portrait in my view, and an interesting area in which to collect. The problem with these stamps is that, as I said at the beginning, there are so many varieties of different paper types and different perforations. And these stamps, depending on which one it is, these stamps can range anything from a value of about £20 up to £3,000 or £4,000. So it's certainly one I'm going to have to look at a little bit more deeply into, and hopefully hone my skills on identifying types of paper. When I'm buying items like this for resale, I generally assume that this is the cheapest version of that stamp, and most of the time that proves to be true, but occasionally you get lucky. So at the moment I'm assuming these are the £20 varieties, but we shall see. I also noticed that the 2p orange on the right seems to have been cut down, so I'll have to have a good look at that one as well. And the stamps at the bottom of the page are from the 1882 set. But once again, there are a load of different paper types and perforations, around about 10 different possibilities, so I would have to have a close look at these as well. The stamps on this page were printed between 1898 and 1902, but once again there's a huge amount of variety in paper types and perforations, so I would have to look closely at those. It does go up to 2 shillings, although I noticed that that does seem to have been trimmed at the side, but maybe there's some value there. On this next page is a victory set at the top from 1920, which aren't particularly worth a lot of money as the high values aren't there. However, the bottom two stamps are the interesting ones. The lower value, the 1 penny one, which isn't shown here, but it's very common, and I have about half a page of these. However, these are the two high values, the 2 shilling and the 3 shilling. And once again, there was two different types of paper, but irrespective of the paper type, the 3 shilling mauve is catalogued at £200, and the 2 shilling is at least £30. So these two stamps are well worth having. Now, this particular set is an interesting little set. This was originally issued in 1935, but then was reissued in 1936 with a different watermark. The 1935 set has a catalogue value of over £200, whereas the 1936 set, it's only £20. So I'm going to have a close look at these. There is writing on the page which would seem to indicate these are from the 1935 set, in which case I should be very happy. And as we shall see in a couple of pages' time, there is another lot from the 1936 set. So hopefully the person who mounted these made the right decisions, but I will double check on that. This particular watermark though is quite difficult to distinguish. It's NZ and star, which in one is very closely together and in the other is slightly farther apart. Now when they're side by side, like I've put them on here, it's fairly easy to notice the difference. As you can see, the rows are slightly offset, which makes it easier. But when you've got one small stamp on its own, it's not always possible to tell the difference between the two. So it's a difficult one to catalogue, but well worth it in terms of value. So again, one I shall have a close look at, and hopefully the person who mounted these, as I said before, has made the right decision on these. These are fairly ordinary, nothing exceptional here. But as I said before, on the next page, this is the same set as before, but the 1936 one with the other watermark. Hopefully, as I said, they've been catalogued correctly, and this looks like the whole set as well, so could be interesting. After that we come on to George VI coronations. Always a popular set, but not exceptionally valued from New Zealand. And the centenary of the Proclamation of Sovereignty set. Nice set, not hugely valued, but as I said, nice set. Again, a nice set. Not a lot of value amongst this lot. And then we have the New Zealand Victory set. It's actually called the Peace issue in New Zealand, but unlike the rest of the Commonwealth, it's a set of 11 stamps as opposed to just a couple. And here we have King George VI definitive set. It's the whole set, which is quite nice. Once again, not a particularly valuable set, unless there are some watermark variations there. And it's interesting to note that there's several copies of some stamps there. Notably the 3 shilling, there's 4 different copies. The 1 and 3, there's 3 different copies. Now, I can't work out whether this has just been laid out to make a pattern or whether they are different stamps. As far as I'm aware, there was only 2 varieties of the 3 shilling. But yeah, it's something I'll have to have a closer look at. We then move on to a fairly, what I consider an ordinary period in the New Zealand stamp collecting. There's nothing to get too excited over here. A lot of health stamps were issued at this time, and they're nice to collect if you can get hold of all of them. And also some of the later ones, there were mini sheets which are quite valuable. But other than this particular set, the Queen Elizabeth definitives, and once again, it's the complete set, and it looks as though it's been laid out in a pattern rather than for any stamping reasons. Because once again, as far as I'm aware, there is only one variety of the 5-shilling carmine and only one variety of the 10-shilling blue. But there are 2 of each of those stamps here. And they make it like a symmetry, so I wonder if the person who collected these stamps had an artistic viewpoint as well as a stamping viewpoint. More of the health stamps. As I said, the bird ones are quite nice as well. And at the bottom we get the first of the New Zealand Christmas stamps, which were always things I remember collecting as a child, and they make a nice group but with no particular value at all. And this is another set I remember as a child. I always had loads and loads of the low value flower stamps, but very few of the others, so it's nice to get an almost complete set there. There's a 10-shilling blue missing, but I've a feeling I have a spare one of those. So once again, not hugely valuable, probably catalogued at £20, but nevertheless it's nice to have the whole set rather than odd ones or gaps. And this set was re-released in decimal currency a few years later, so hopefully we'll get to see that one as well. More health stamps and more Christmas stamps. And for some reason birds featured a lot in their health stamps around this point in time. And here's the set, as I said, in decimal currency. I think that's the complete set of those. Strangely, there's 2 $1 ones. One of those could be an inverted watermark, which if it is over £100 in catalogue value, but there would seem to be no other reason to put 2 there, but fingers crossed, I'll check on that one. And from this point on, from about 1970 onwards, there aren't too many stamps that are worth a lot of money, but there are some nice ones to look at, and we'll just have a look through and see what else is there. It looks like there's a few complete sets there, which is quite nice. Particularly if I'm trying to sell these on, it's always nice to have complete sets rather than a few stamps with one missing, because you can guarantee the one that's missing is the one that everybody wants. So yeah, there's still plenty here to look at. So there we go. At first impression, I think I've got my money's worth. I'm happy with that. As I said before, I should look in more detail to see the exact value of some of the more difficult stamps, but hopefully there'll be something there for me to get my teeth stuck into. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, and happy collecting. Thank you for listening to my podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it and maybe you've learnt a little too. I would love to hear from you with your tips and stories. I can be found on Facebook and Instagram as Ourdadsstamps, as well as through my online shops at eBay and Delcamp. Listen again next week for another episode of the Ourdadsstamps podcast.